Good morning. So, I am in the salubrious surrounds of my kitchen with just my laptop. And speaking of which, I need to power on my laptop. Because I couldn't go into my studio today because my daughter is sick. Which happens. So I've been frantically scrambling around my kitchen, trying to figure out how I could do this live stream. Because I promised myself that I would be consistent to the live streams once I got them on. So here I am in all its very DIY glory today. We may even have a visitor from my daughter later who might help us with composing. Who knows? So hence the blurry background, the probably very questionable audio, and everything else. We're going very, very, very lo-fi today, which is no harm. It reminds you of, the things that are important, like, communication and consistency and all this kind of stuff. Speaking of consistency, I have coffee, which I didn't have last week. So if you're just jumping on, today we're gonna explore something together about the editor Walter Murch. And if you haven't heard of Walter Murch before, he probably most notably, the term sound designer was coined and credited for the first time in Apocalypse Now for him because of the exceptional sound design work that he did on that film. And I think that's why his book In the Blink of an Eye is about editing, and I think he's very sympathetic to composers and musicians, and sound design in general, and world building through kind of visual and audio experience, which essentially is what films are anyway. But I think in his book, In the Blink of an Eye, he outlines these 6 rules for film editing. So let me get them up here. So, hard and fast rules don't really apply when you're doing creative work like this. But, a good framework to guide your work, or to at least get started, can really help. So let me turn off my phone as well. Oh my god, it's all happening today. Everybody have any one of those days? And now, so this might be one of those live streams that may not be left up. I don't know why I've suddenly gone small there. That's strange. There we go. Some things are within your control. So yes, his 6 rules. Number 1, and he outlines these like hierarchically, as in order of importance. So number 1, emotion. Does it emotionally resonate? Does your editing choice emotionally resonate? So I'm looking at how we can translate these to composition. I'll just go through all the list first, and then I'll, because most of them are the same, but I will get back to his list later. So 1, emotion. Does it emotionally resonate? 2, does it support the story and the story arc? Number 3, pacing and rhythm. Number 4 is eye trace, and what they mean by this is that the audience eyes should be guided from one shot to the next shot without it going, wait a minute, he was just standing on a cliff and now he's in a tree, and what happened? Like, it has to make some sort of linear sense. Now, again, these can all be challenged if your purpose is to subvert the audience. Two-dimensional plane of screen, which is your ups and your downs and your left and right being consistent, and three-dimensional space of action if you have characters in your scene that the audience knows where the characters are in relation to the other characters. So, say, at the end of Revenge of the Sith, when they're having the big lightsaber battle, if you didn't know that they were fighting each other, for example, it might be a bit of a strange comparison, but there you go. So then to bring it across to like the composer realm, what I was thinking was rules 1, 2, and 3 are quite similar. So you have emotional choices. Does it emotionally resonate? Is it emotionally true to the story that's trying to be told? Or 2 is story. Are you helping to move the story along? And I wouldn't underestimate the power of music in relation to character arcs and progression of story. Like, how many horror films do you see start off with like a fairly benign score, or they might use kind of music to set you up for a fall, and as the story goes on it gets more and more tense through the music. I mean, that's musical storytelling right there. Pacing and rhythm, which I think is the most similar of the two crafts between editing and composition, is pacing and rhythm. This sense of how fast scenes are moving, or you can speed up time, or if you picture a montage, I always think of those montages where somebody's uncovering something by doing all this research in a library, an Aaron Brockovich style. They're doing all the research, and it's, if you were to follow it linearly, it'd be the most boring scene ever. But by clever use of music and editing, it feels like kind of like an action scene. Like an action scene's maybe pushing it a little bit too far, but think of The Social Network. They had such a difficult task of explaining really dry, boring, subject matter, which is like computer screens and back end and coding and things like that, but they managed to make it really engaging. So I think, pacing and rhythm, the composer and the editor work hand in hand, and I think it's where they overlap the most. Now, rules 4, 5, and 6, this is where it kind of deviates, because the rules of editing, eye trace, obviously you can't really account for eye trace. It's a visual thing, But if there was a compositional comparison, I think what would be a good comparison here would be attention of the viewer. So you can draw attention to certain things that are happening on screen. So you could give an inanimate object meaning by scoring it a certain way, or you could revive a theme that's associated with a specific character, meaning that this character's point of view within the scene is really important. So I think in order to direct the audience where you go, directors do this all the time. They will guide the audience eye line to where they want it to be. And I think music can do this too. You can draw attention to kind of where you want the audience to maybe focus, but also how you might want them to feel, or are they going to be sympathetic to a certain character in this point of view, or something like that. Next one, number 5. This is a two-dimensional space. Your ups and downs. Um, Something that's interesting for me is um, musical expectations or audiovisual counterpoint, and this would be where you've got a couple of choices when you're composing for something, in terms of kind of um, this counterpoint, is in is this going to be an underscore where there are other things taking um, prescience and the score is more underneath, um, less to be noticed and more textural, and up to a point expected. Now, say for example, if there's an action scene, the audience quite often will expect like an ostinato or a repeating figure, or if there's um, a sad moment, the audience will expect sad music. So it's being consistent with audience expectations. Now, this can be totally flipped, and you can mess around with audience expectations, where you can flip it and go, the audience is expecting to hear something here, so I'm going to subvert it and make them hear something different. Now, obviously, you need to discuss this very carefully with your director if that's a direction that you want to go. But I think that that's a really something to consider, is that um, to a certain extent the audience needs to be secure in what they're watching to have a consistent viewing experience. And that sounds strange, but it's like if you're traveling by train, you expect to see tracks, you know, and sometimes those tracks and that framework is put in. Now, this kind of leads me to an aside that maybe down the line it's gotten a little bit too stable. I mean, just look at the stuff that Netflix is putting out. I mean, when you watch a Netflix film, more often than not, you know it's a Netflix film because this scaffolding of expectation has already been built. It's there for you already. So, um, but I think it's something that you can consider musically. Now, in order of importance for Walter Murch, his was two-dimensional space. He gave it like 5% consideration. So it's not really that important to think about. But if you can do it and it serves the purpose, well then, it's worth considering. And number 6 then is a three-dimensional space. The um the gravity or the geography of characters. One character in relation to the other character, um, that you always know who's where and things like that. So that's that equivalent would be for me the harmonic space and the sonic palette that you've chosen for the film. So, say for example, you have a very orchestral score, and it's very kind of traditional and acoustic. And then halfway through the film, you jump to like a hybrid style, and the whole tone of what you're writing shifts. So, it's kind of, once you've established the sound world for the project or the film or whatever it is, that you're being kind of consistent to that sound world and you're not jumping all over the place through different genres of things, that there's a coherence to what your palette is like. Now again, these are not hard, and these are perfectly, you know, if you go the opposite way with any of these ideas, they're likely to work equally as well. And again, the percentage on this is like 4% importance. So it really comes down from story down. It's like you know, it's like the food pyramid, isn't it? Where the most amount of what you should be consuming is story and emotion. And everything else is kind of a treat. So I think there's merit in thinking like this in terms of your compositions. Now, how do you put this into practice? I mean, it would take a lot of work to to consider that for every musical decision you're going to make. But I think if you're stuck on a cue and you're wondering how you can where you can go from here, you can go, am I thinking of this from an emotional place or from a story place? Or am I thinking of it from, you know, a personally, artistically fulfilling place, which may not be the time and the place because you're working on someone else's project for that to happen. So that's what I've been thinking about this week. It's in my Substack this week. In the blink of an eye, the composer's version. So again, this is what I kind of like exploring most as a composer. Like, I think there's so many good tutorials and um, things out there you can find for the tools of how to write your music and compose your music. But what I'm fascinated by exploring is the kind of philosophical ideas of why music and visual work in the first place, and how we can kind of live within the framework of audience expectations, because there's 100 years of cinematic language that is kind of the norm, and a lot of it is subconscious. And when you sit down to watch a film, you expect it to be a certain way, and if it's different, that it jars you out of your suspension of disbelief. And I think a good example of that was I went to see The Hobbit in the super high frame rate, and all of the landscapes and the characters traveling through these landscapes just looked really strange, and I couldn't get on board with it because I preferred um, a traditional frame rate. It was what I was used to, and it felt more cinematic. And I think there's a lot to be said for traditions, but there's also a lot to be said for subverting those traditions and going new places, as long as they make artistic sense. And I think finding ways to do that is really interesting. And if you can find directors and collaborators who like to push themselves outside um, the box and outside the limits, is can only be a good thing. So yeah, that's what I think. That's what I'm currently thinking at the moment. So this is Friday, coffee and composing, and because I have a weird blurry background, I didn't want to spend the whole time just talking into a screen like this. But funnily enough, it was a verbose episode. But I do want to get to some actual composing stuff. So um, see how my if my shorts version is going. Does that come up blurry? Who knows? I've got a new little screen here that's like shorts version. So Okay, if anybody's knocking around, say hello. I have some links in the chat. Again, I'm not sure if I'm gonna actually post this video. So if you're watching this in the next couple of hours after it goes live, I'll see how it does. I'm not 100% because it's very, very DIY. I mean, it's literally laptop microphone and blurry OBS webcam. Which, who knows, maybe is your thing. Maybe, you know, you're bored of AI and AI doing AI stuff. So maybe you like the old school DIY-ness of it. And if you do, more power to you. But yes, let's jump in. I'm going to jump into this session for Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence, which I'm frantically trying to finish off before Christmas. Now, because our audio setup is so basic, I think what I might do here is just show you how I might go about cleaning up a session. So I try not to work like this as best I can, which is that when I'm putting something together, I like to use a template and I like to be a little bit more organized. But in this particular case, I was just kind of messing around and throwing instruments down, and this is what happened. So I'm going to try and consider myself like a mix engineer, and if somebody had sent me on a session, how would I kind of clear it up and get everything ready for a proper final mix. So this is less about the sound of things and more about the organization and putting things into groups for a final mix, because I think I've quite a lot of the instruments done and laid down, so I'm kind of happy with where they are. So let's jump into Logic. Where do I go? I go down here and then I go here. Yeah. So I think I'm going to get a bit of fur from. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm coming.
I think I'm gonna throw up.
Okay. Okay, are we back? We're back. Let's just check the sound and everything. I see now that my blur screen is gone. So you get to see my amazing kitchen. Okay. Have we got some noise? Are we back? Have we got some noise? Okay, we're good. Okay, so like I said, we're just going to go through this session and start clearing it up a little bit and putting things into groups and things like that. So it's not a massive session. Some things might need to be quantized and that kind of thing. And strings, I want to put more strings on. I won't do that now. The click I was using, I printed a click because I wanted to put it alongside a video I'm trying to put together for this. Now, I need to find out what this is. So that's the rule number one, is know what's on your tracks. So this particular one is like a plucked synth. So let's have a listen. And okay, that's quite Beatlesy, isn't it? So just while I'm thinking of it, I'm going to copy this and also make this one Mellotron, because it sounds to me like a Mellotron. I might not use it later on, but I want to have it in case I feel like, you know, wants to have a Mellotron later on. I feel like I'm whispering. Am I whispering? Mellotron doesn't come up in searches, of course not. And see the piano. Let's see if we can find it here. Mellotron. I know there is one in Logic somewhere. I'm probably spending way too much time on this already, but this is the joy of things. Ah, vintage Mellotron. I knew it was right there. So, you kind of want the flute version, don't you? Oh, it's going to get them all. And in the meantime, while that's downloading, I want to put in whatever this guy is. This is a Lanois bellow. Can't remember my own password. I assume that doesn't come up as shared for everybody who's watching this right now. So let's have a listen to this Mellotron. Well, maybe strings and flute. Be nice when it's mixed. So these are sounding kind of blue to me. So let's colorize, if I can remember what the shortcut to track color is. I can never remember. Now I am also colorblind, so you know, bear with me. And we also want the name. So percussion is, okay, this is the Lindrum. And this is probably, what are you now? Rhythm machine. Probably play on the rhythm composer. Oh, we have somebody. Hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome to my kitchen. So, as I was saying earlier, that today is very lo-fi. It's very DIY, and bear with me. So, it's kind of clearing up a session, really. That's the composing part of it. So, I'm kind of working with this as if I was getting it handed like a mix engineer. How do I put it all together to get ready for mixing? So this is guitar. Melody. And this is also guitar melody. Guitar melody 1. So how are you all doing today? How is your Friday going? Bit of a weird one today because I'm doing this from my kitchen. My daughter is sick. She came for a little visit there, so there's a little interruption to the live stream. But she's doing okay. She's on the couch watching Peppa Pig. So she's not doing too bad. But thank you for asking. This is a chorusy kind of a synth. This is a this is like a Mark II. Yeah, okay. And this bridge synth is, oh yeah, the Lanois Bellow. I meant to name this because I want to put all these synths in kind of in the same place. And yeah, so I might even group these depending on, like, you can group them depending on sound wise what they're doing, but you can also, I often find that grouping things in terms of what they're doing kind of melodically and harmonically. Do you know, do we have like a rhythm section, or do we have a melodic section doing something? I'm going to change some of these colors as well, so because they're all the same color, I'm going to pop these solid dark color with some red. Yeah, does that work for everybody? There we go. So because I'm kind of limited with what I can do here, I'm literally using my MacBook in the kitchen to do this, and I didn't want to not come on and do the live stream, so it's very, very lo-fi today. So yeah, look, even, you know, no product placement and stuff, but just saying, my waddy, if you want to come at me, we'll do a brand partnership, and you know, you can sideline and film composing. Then I have 3 tracks called bass, which is great. And this is the retro synth. This will just make my life easier when I'm going to actually mix it later on. Now I think I know what I did here. I think I just layered up, like I've spoken about before with synthesizers, when you have mono synths, to pair them with other synths to get kind of different harmonic resonance and frequency stuff going on in a blend of mono synth. So you're kind of ultimately thinking of a mono synth like a polysynth, I guess. Would that make sense? And here's another retro synth bass, which may be doing the same thing. So So this is the point where you chastise the artist, wouldn't it? And you'd be like, why did you make this decision? And the artist would get back to you and go, I don't know. Which is exactly what I did. And then we have an ES2. So if you haven't got onto the synths in Logic Pro yet, jump on. What are you doing? You should totally get on that, because the synths in Logic Pro are really good. Including this one, the ES2, which is their kind of flagship. And yeah, let's see, just see what they're doing. Now, this is obviously not a bass. This is a synth pad. I don't know why it's written as bass. This should probably be in red as well. So let's do that. Just color. Anything else not named. So Option Shift N names your tracks, just in case you wanted to know that. This is probably not a bass either. That is. And then we have a sub version. So I can just about hear this on my laptop speakers. So these are really the two basses. I hope some of this is making sense. This is kind of all just decision making, really. Some of it may make sense, some of it may not. But let me know, jump on the chat. I am flicking back and forward. And so then we have a ton of drums laid out here, but we haven't used any of them. So whatever the reason. Now, I know I probably used the AI drummer for this. It's quite Phil Collins-y, isn't it? It's like the air tonight, isn't it? And oh, this is kind of cool. So this is like an Ondes Martineau doing a harmonic part, or a harmony part. So, or it's not quite a Ondes Martineau, but it's called an Ondes in there, or an Ondes Musical Mobius Blip. So whatever that is. This is Labs software. Labs is made by Spitfire Audio, who were now subsumed by Splice, I believe. But their lab stuff still has a ton of free sounds. So get on that. I'm going to call it an Ondes Martineau for now, because I'll know what I mean by that. Probably. And we give it this color. Yeah. And then we've got our guitars. And this all looks pretty good, right? And strings. And strings pits. So I'll set up a group for you. Strings and keys can go. In fact, I'm going to put my strings on the bottom. Yeah, sorry. I keep forgetting that I'm actually live streaming this. So if you're watching my strange thought process as I do this, I realize I'm not explaining myself very well. So these synths and keys. Let's see what these keys are doing. Like a whirly. Yeah, so these are doing Atmos kind of things. And they're only in here for this intro section. So let's call them Atmos keys. For the intro. That'll do. And then we have our guitars, which I need to come back and tidy up later on. And maybe add some more to. But I'm kind of liking where they're at the moment. Which is cool. This is a harmony. And I think I'm gonna keep it with the guitars because it's aligned to them. So this is what I mean about sometimes you make these groupings like that. So the bass, I'm gonna group as a bass. Now I know somebody might be watching this going, what are you doing and why are you doing it? Just the way my brain is working, unfortunately. Bass, I'm going to bring it down to the bottom. And then all this stuff, guide chords, click. These are all kind of junk. They're starting off points and they'll all be deleted towards the end, but I'm really reluctant to delete initial things in case something happens and you want to come back to an earlier reference. When they're gone, and they're the hardest things to recreate because they're the furthest things from your memory. So sometimes I'll throw them in a group folder and just call it junk. Or sketch or something like that. And now we're getting a little bit closer to where we want to be. Group these. Oh, come on. And we just call it drums for now. And this is not a bass, so I just want to change it. It is an ES2, but it's doing something else. So and then we'll group these guys as a synth. So there we have it, kind of cleared up. Synth, drums, guitars. This guy I haven't decided where to put him yet, but I'll come back to that. So even just 20 minutes, and that is now I know where everything's happening, which is good. Sometimes I'll combine these into one track, so I'm not chopping and changing and know where things are. But colors and names really. And the next step, let me jump back into my crappy webcam here for a minute. The next step then would be would be like an effects routing and things like that. So you send everything and start getting it all kind of living sonically where it's going to live. And then you're ready to kind of start mixing. And what I will often do is I will try and do a mix with what I have and try and make a rule of you're not allowed to add any extra instruments, because more often than not you will hear things and go, oh, that'll be cool, I'll add an extra instrument and stuff like that, and your mix starts to get over egged. So once I tidy up all of that, I'm going to really try my best to keep that as my final mix, stems wise. So we'll see how it goes. I mean, as I said earlier, these things are all subject to change. So that is it. We got through it. I'm going to have to revisit this to our little interrupting visitor. But yeah, next week we will not be here. But I'm thinking about doing a different day next week. So I think Thursday morning I'm going to do coffee and composing and do my live Substack. So if you've been holding out and waiting with bated breath to jump on and say something in the chat, come along and do that and write in, say hi. In the meantime, check out the links that are there in the chat. I should probably put these in the descriptions of all my live streams, but this is all new stuff. But yeah, other than that, I will see you on the next one. Thanks for putting up with this weird setup that we had today, and hope it didn't put you off too much. And yeah, we'll see you on the next one. Bye.